Hello, everyone, and welcome to Romance HEA and Readers' Expectations I was going to say podcast, but it's a panel brought to you by WriteHive, the awesome online convention that we've got set up for you guys. I hope that you've been enjoying the day so far. I am here today with my friends Rebecca, Sarah, and Mandy. We are going to talk a little bit about writing romance and how to do it well. So let's do some introductions first. Let's go with Rebecca.
Hi, so I am Rebecca Hefner, and I live right outside of New York City. So kind of in the middle of our hot spot currently, but things are trucking along here. And I write paranormal, fantasy, and sci-fi romance. And I published my first book in November of 2018. So I've been an indie author for almost 2 years now, and I'm publishing my sixth book on like 3 weeks from now. So at the end of April. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Welcome to the group. Sarah?
Thanks.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarah Bailey. I'm from the UK, although I live in Scotland in a very rural area, so not too bad here. I write, let's go through the list: paranormal, erotic, dark, reverse harem, and romances. And I just released a book, and I'm releasing a whole new series over the next few months, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, that's me.
Congratulations on that, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mandy, how about you?
Hi, I'm Mandy Lawson. I write sweet romance. So, if you like the little Hallmark movies, you'll like my books. I live in Arkansas, like central Arkansas. And so you'll probably tell from my accent. It's a little southern, I've been told. So yeah, I've been an indie author, I guess, since 2018. I've got 3 books in my series right now, and my 4th one will be coming out probably end of May. So depends on how revisions go.
Awesome. Congratulations on that, Mandy.
That's thanks.
Thank you all for coming. So let's get it started. The number one question I love to ask romance authors is, how do you keep up with the voraciousness of your readers? Romance readers they just devour things all the time, constantly. So how do you keep up with that demand?
So from my point of view, I'm an author, but I'm also a voracious romance reader myself. So I understand how quickly they go through books, because I definitely do as well. It's hard because you want to make sure you put out a good product. So you don't want to just like put out something that's not, back after back to make, to just keep going if it's not something that your readers are really going to identify and connect with. So for me, I published 4 books in my series, my vampire romance series. And then I actually took a break because I felt like if I kept writing that series, I wasn't going to stay fresh. And I actually started a new series and published that. And then I'm now publishing the 5th book in my paranormal romance series, and it's been about a year. But I think that me taking a break from that series and writing something new really helped me to write this 5th book much, I don't know, just the feedback from my editor and from my proofreader was that it was the best book I've written. Like, it was, you could tell that I really have grown as a writer and put some things into it that I maybe wouldn't have been able to do if I had just written it right after that 4th book. So for me, I feel like it's important to keep the books coming out because you have to, but you also want to take a break where appropriate so that you can make sure you're still giving them something that they can connect with when the book eventually does come out. So that's my perspective
on it. For me, gosh, keeping up with my readers, I guess I write quite fast, so it's kind of easier for me to keep up with things, but I do take breaks in order to make, when I'm writing a new series, You usually write those back to back. I say usually, no, it doesn't always happen. And you know, I'm someone who likes to write cliffhangers. So I don't have the luxury of not releasing my books quickly because of that reason, because I know how much readers hate cliffhangers. I think people have a love-hate relationship with them. So for me, it's not about, I want the quality there, obviously, but I also have to give my readers what they want. And it's a lot of pressure, I think, on writers, especially indie authors. When this is your income, you have to kind of keep releasing new material, and it's a fine balancing act, I would say.
For me, I guess like it's taking me a little longer to produce things. I've already written all the books in this series. They're all finished, but getting it published, I'm learning still in the publishing business and learning things that I need to do that are better. So I'm kind of taking my time. I've slowed down a little bit, really making sure, because my first two books, the story is great, but I know that it could have been better had I taken my time and really did the research that I needed to do in order to publish those. But I mean, they're still really good stories. I just know, like, if I really nitpicked, I could go back and be like, oh, that needed more work. But like my third book it had an editor, and so it's, you know, for me, that's like my proudest one yet. And the fourth one coming is going to be even better because I know I'm learning more. But for my readers, like, I want them to have something quickly, because I know some of them have already finished number 3 and they're like, okay, where's number 4? Where's number 4? And so, like, I want to get it out there, but I also want to take time, make sure it's really exactly polished like I really want it to be. So there's, you know, it's a balance of wanting to get something out there and also wanting it to just be, you know, the best quality that it can be. Because I know indie authors tend to get a little you know, a reputation for not having the best quality of work sometimes, and so I don't want that. Like, I feel like today, like, what I've learned through the writing community and different people, like, I'm learning that there's really a good group of indie authors out there, and they're just really they're not like you two ladies are fabulous, and we're just not getting the recognition that we deserve. And so yeah, just making sure it's quality and trying to get it out as quickly as possible. So I know that everyone's ready for the wedding. So I'm really trying to get it out there so everybody can hear about it.
I was going to add
Yeah.
that I think that you're right, Mandy. I think that indie authors don't receive as much credit as they should for how good some of us are. And I think that doing what all of you have said, where striking that balance and figuring out how fast can I put it out versus how good of a quality can I make the story, is exactly the sort of thing that will push us closer to where I think we should be, which is people should be reading much more indie than they should be reading traditionally published stuff. But maybe that's just selfish of me to say, because I am also an indie author. That said, though, all of you are indie, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So do you think that you have an advantage as a romance author being indie versus being traditionally published?
Well, so for me, I think there are some advantages. So the reason that I was in corporate America for over 12 years, and I always wanted to. Well, I started writing these stories. I never thought I was going to publish them, but eventually I decided that I did want to publish them. So I saved up all my money and I left my career in order to become an author. And by the time I did that and I was ready to pursue it, I didn't want to wait to query or find a publisher or find an agent. Like, I was so ready, and I felt like I had the means and the opportunity through all my hard work, you know, over a decade in corporate America to secure an editor and secure those resources on my own. So that's one of the reasons I decided to just self-publish. I created my own publishing imprint called Reading Goddess Press LLC, and
Oh, I
like made a
like that.
business out of it. Thanks. So for me, that was one advantage was that I could control who my editor was, when I wanted to publish, what, and I really could retain creative control of my stories, so that if there was something that I really felt was important, I knew with a traditional publishing house, they might have this final say whether that got cut from my book or not. And now, even though I discuss things with my editor and my proofreader and beta readers and things, I'm always the one in control of the story. So for me, I think that's a really big advantage. And I'll pass it to Sarah and Mandy for them to name some other ones, but I enjoy it.
Well, I agree with Rebecca. My biggest thing was creative control, and also wanting to be my own boss and not wanting to have to wait, because traditional publishing takes a very long time. Let's face it. You could get a contract and your book won't come out for another year. And I'm like, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do this myself. So like Rebecca, I made my own publishing company, which is Twisted Tree Publications. And I did this myself. And it means that I get to set all of my deadlines. I get to set my publishing schedule. I can publish a book whenever I want, if I want to, and that's the kind of, and I work better that way. I don't like having a boss. I quite want it. The moment I was able to go full-time writing, I was like, yes, please. And I'm, of course, in quite a privileged position in that I can write full-time. And yeah, I think we do, in some respects, have an advantage because we can put books out faster, and we're not restricted to one book a year or 2 books a year. So we can build our readership that way by not necessarily putting out as many books as possible, because I don't think that that's what people should be doing. You can if you want, but just putting books out there that we believe in and getting our readers that way. I think that's kind of why I chose to self-publish as opposed to go through the traditional publishing route.
For me, I did traditional publishing at first. I published Party Central actually in 2009 with a traditional publisher, and it was a small publishing company, but it just didn't work for me. I hated the cover. It was okay, but it's just like everything that came through to me was just, I didn't like it. And the editor that I was given literally came back with me with, this is awesome. Like there wasn't there was very little editing that took place. And so, and anything that marketing or turning it into ebook, like I was gonna have to pay for all of these things. And I was like, I don't understand why you all have control of this, because luckily I kept my copyright, so I have the rights to my book. But I was just very unpleased with it, and I just felt like I was very excited, and I thought this was going to take off, and then it didn't. And so I got very discouraged, and I just quit. I was like, done. I don't even want to deal with this anymore. And I would have people be like, you wrote a book? I'm like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. like whatever. We're just not going to mention it, because it felt like I got on the top of a roller coaster and it just went straight like this. There was no fun little, loops. It was not fun for me. And so I gave up on it. But, an opportunity someone brought to me, they're like, why don't you just publish it yourself? And I'm like, how do you even do that? So I started researching it and realized this is exactly what I wanted to do. And so just through some, learning curves and everything. But I love indie publishing. I love that I have control over everything. I have control over the cover. I have control over the storyline. My editor just got back with me on all of revisions, and she wants to cut out some things, and I'm like, no, I don't want to. I really like that part. And so I have that control. I don't have to answer to somebody else. And so that's, for me, I really enjoy that, because I know where my story is going to go in the future. So when an editor wants to cut something, they don't really understand our headspace and where our story's going to go, and we do. And so it's nice to be able to be like, I understand why you want to cut that, but I can't, because I know where the story's going forward and I need that piece to stay in there. And so that's the wonderful thing about indie publishing, is being able to keep that control, and also just having the freedom to just, you can market as you wish, as little or as much as you want to. Marketing is a whole other thing. But I do love that. I just love indie publishing over traditional, just because of, I know that in traditional publishing, I have a really good friend that she has a series that's been traditionally published. It's an amazing middle school series, but she quit traditional publishing because they cut so much of her story out. And she doesn't even have control over it anymore. She has no ownership of that book. Like, it's her story, but she doesn't own it anymore. And so, like, she can't republish it. She can't put new covers on it if she wanted to. And so she decided to go into indie publishing instead. And so she loves it. And so it was really neat to, her name is Tamara Hart. I don't know if you guys have heard of her, but she's really, really great. So anyway, I can keep talking. I just, you have to just shut me off.
Well, first of all, thank you for your perspectives, ladies. Shout out to Tamara Hart if you're listening or watching out there. Specifically being indie as a romance author, I'm interested in your ladies' perspective on how do I put this? For example, Sarah, you write really kind of dark romance, and Mandy, you write really sweet romance. Rebecca, I'm not super familiar on the kind of romance you write in regards to like the actual romantic parts, but as an indie, it seems to me that it's much easier for Sarah, if you wanted to go a little bit lighter in your romance, you could do that without an imprint getting in your way. Mandy, you could go a little darker if you wanted to for the same reason. And Rebecca, I'm sure that you could also kind of change up how you do things. Do you guys, do you ladies use that to your advantage, or do you plan to? Is that something that comes into your head at any point?
Should I go first? Okay.
Sarah, you start.
Okay. For me, yes, because I started out writing slightly lighter books, I would say. And when I made the decision to write a darker book, it wasn't really a decision I made as a business. It's just because I wanted to write it. And then I just wanted to write it because my friend got me into dark romances, and I was like, I want to write one like this. I want to do this. So I wrote one. And then I ended up writing a trilogy, as some of us know. And well, I put that out, and that then became my extremely popular series. And I was like, well, okay. So then I had to start giving people what they wanted, which is more dark books. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to write other things, because I also am currently writing something completely different to what I normally write, at the same time as writing the last book in my series, which is more of a kind of, it's still kind of dark, but it's not, it's more of a coming of age thing, and it's not the same as what I normally write. So I think I can use that to my advantage, because I can still release that to my audience and they'll probably lap it up because it's one of my books. But, you know, because I now have a fan base, they pretty much jump on board. So when I decided, I'm going to write a reverse harem, people were like, okay, let's read it. You know, because normally I write a single couple male and female romances, and this was kind of something new, and I was really scared about releasing it because I was like, what are people going to say, because this is not what I normally write. So far the reaction has been really great, so I think I can use that to my advantage as an indie. I don't think I could do that if I was traditionally publishing, because people would expect me to write the same thing. whereas now I can just write what I want,
Yeah.
as long as it's dark. I guess not as long as it's dark, but as long as it's got my signature style on it, I think people are more willing to read something by me.
Mandy?
For me, like the Laura Kate London series is very close to my heart because Laura Kate is very much me. So it's very easy for me to just write this as if it were me, and it'd be because I'm just generally just sweet romance is my jam. It's like I like, I get very the steamy scenes. I really like them, but me writing them, I can't.
Uh-oh, looks like we lost Mandy.
We lost her.
Oh, that's all right. Her internet is probably catching up with her. While it does, Rebecca, do you want to go ahead and give your answer?
Sure. So I have an interesting answer on this, I guess. So I was in, like I said, I was in corporate America. I was a corporate salesperson. So I know Mandy, she doesn't she doesn't love the marketing aspect of being an indie author. And I know Sarah does great at it. I'm not sure that she loves it. But I was in sales. So I actually really love the marketing part. And I think a really important part of being a romance author is branding. So I'll be honest, Rebecca Hefner is not the only name I write under. I actually write under 3 names. But Rebecca Hefner is the one that I actually brand and put out there. I write nonfiction under a different name, and then I write like steamy holiday novellas under another name. But I keep them separate because I have different reader bases, and I think that it's really important. Like the Rebecca Hefner reader name is, for me, those are the books that I love to read, paranormal and sci-fi romance. So those are the books that I pour my heart and soul into because it's what I love, and it's what, for me, I want my face, my name, and everything associated with, because it's what I love to read and it's what I love to write and it's what I really put my heart and soul into. So I think I do write different things under different pen names and things like that. Some authors choose to write everything under one name. I think either way is fine. It just depends on how you want to brand yourself and put yourself out to the world. But for me, for my Rebecca Hefner books, I have such a specific reader base. I actually have quite a few male readers as well, which is really important to me because I'm on this whole journey to get more men reading romance novels.
They should.
Yeah. So, and I certainly don't have any male readers for my other like steamy novella pen name. So for me, I'm on this sort of mission to write these stories that, yes, have steamy scenes, but also really have really good fantasy elements and sci-fi and paranormal elements and twists and all of these things that bring in different genres of readers. So I mean, I could change things a little bit, but I want to keep everything in that fantasy paranormal romance realm because that's what I know my readers enjoy.
Yeah. Cool. Mandy, we
I'm
lost
sorry,
you a little bit.
are you I don't know what happened. So I just disconnected from my Wi-Fi so that way it won't interfere. So I'm sorry.
All good. So we left you on you saying that Laura Kate is very much like you, and therefore it's very easy for you to write your books. Where were you going with that?
I feel like that's just my sweet spot, is being able to just write those sweet romances, and I could branch out if I wanted to, but I don't know that it would be me. I'm working on a YA romance right now it's very different from what I'm writing now, but it still has that sweetness to it. It's just not something like I could branch out and write something a little steamier if I wanted to, or I've even thought about like fantasy and things like that, but I feel like I don't want to branch out far. Like if it comes to a time where I feel like I want to, but I still want to be able to I still want my readers to appreciate whatever it is. Even if I branch out a little bit, I still want it to still stay true to me. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about HEA, or happily ever after, which is a topic that I knew zero about until I spoke with Sarah long ago, and we started thinking about what a romance panel would be like. I think it's really important as a topic because there are a lot of people that might be watching this that don't write romance as a main genre, but they do want to apply romance into their books for subplot purposes. So I'd like to get your thoughts on Happily Ever After, or Happily for Now, and how do you address it in your writing?
Yeah, so so there are two main facets to it. So number one is you have to have a central love story, and number two is that it has to have a HEA, a happily ever after ending. And so for me, I always get really frustrated when people are like, "Oh, Nicholas Sparks is a romance author," and I'm like, "No, he's not, because everybody dies at the end. That's not an HEA. That's not a happy ever after. Like, if your heroine dies of cancer, no." So for me, it's just really important. Like that Nicholas Sparks writes romantic fiction. Fine. Like that's the category that it falls into. But a romance novel itself has to have that central love story. And whether it could be a central love story between a man and two women, or a woman and three men, like Sarah's writing a reverse harem. But it has to have a central love story, and then it has to have an HEA. So for me, that's just something that I am so, when people say like, "Oh, I wrote this book and it's a romance," and then I'm like, "Oh, everyone dies in the end." No, that's just like romantic fiction, which is fine. Just don't call it a romance. That's my 2 cents on
that. Romance. Okay. So I think like a happy ever after. I agree with Rebecca, but what I want to talk about is how a happy ever after has changed a lot over the number of years that we have. Romance has been a thing, because it used to be very much marriage and babies was the end game of all romances, and if it didn't have that, then it's not a romance. But I think over the past kind of maybe 10 years more, it's changed, and it's basically the couple has to end up together in a way that's realistic for them. So that doesn't necessarily mean marriage and babies. And some people define that as a happy for now, but I don't, because I think we are in a modern society and our love stories or our romances have to reflect that. And not everyone wants to get married, not everyone wants to have babies. So, and now we have books that are more open and, gay romances and things, and those might not necessarily end up in marriage and babies, let's face it. So to me, it's changed a lot, and that means that we've got more scope as romance writers to write happy endings, because they don't have to necessarily follow this marriage and babies. They can be, this couple goes through all of these things and then they're together at the end and happy, and they're going to sail off into the sunset, regardless of the fact of whether they will get married or not. I mean, that's my thing on it, is that basically they just have to be together in a way that that in the future they're going to stay together. So that's what a happy ending is for me, and it definitely has to have that at the end of the book. Otherwise, I'm like, it's not a romance, I'm afraid. And that is also another one of my pet peeves, of people calling things romances when they're not. But in romantic subplots have the same thing. I think that you do have to have, if you're going to market it as something that's got a romance in it, those people should be together at the end of the book, or the end of the series, because they're not always together at the end of the first book if you're writing a series or a duet, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. I mean, I like for a romance to end in a, oh, yay, they ended up together. I cannot. And you want the conflict. You want the, oh no, are they not going to end up together? You want that little bit of stress, but it has to end at the end with them together, or it's just not a romance. You can't get to the end of it and go, and they died. Like, what happened there? Like, that's not romance. I mean, you know that it can be real life, but that's not okay. I mean, the point I feel like in romance for a lot of women and men is it's a nice escape, and it's a story that you want to root for, and you want to know. I feel like in romance we want hope, like hope for something amazing, and so that I feel like that's a main point of romance books is we want the hope for happy, and that's what people want to read. They want to read to know that even if in my own life things aren't going great, I want to read about something that can give me hope to be happy. And so I feel like that's really something that romance needs. You got to have the happy for now, happy forever after. I mean, I live my life like a Disney princess. I mean, I just want to have the happily ever after, and I want to sail away in the sunset with a beautiful man. But that's just me.
How with that?
So
Yeah.
how do you
He doesn't have to have abs. I mean, that's nice, but I mean, it's just.
So how
Someone else talk.
how as romance writers do you ladies pull the reader through your story, knowing that they kind of expect at the end of the book that these characters are going to be together? They've read so many romance books where at the end the characters get together and they live happily ever after. How do you maintain their interest when they can kind of guess that that's going to be the end?
By giving your couple enough conflict and story to engage them. And I think actually the most important thing in a romance is you show that the characters are developing as people throughout your story. And that is because people, I think a lot of romance is very character driven. As a thing, having a central romance plot is to do with the two characters. It's not to do with all the outside stuff. Well, obviously a lot of romances also have outside plot, and it's showing those people growing as people together or getting together that keeps the reader engaged. So even though we know that they're going to end up at the end of the book, we still have to go through this journey where they become a couple that you want to root for. So you, as a writer, we have to make that couple the couple that you want to root for. And that's really what romance is about, I think.
Mandy?
I, like you said, you want to see character growth, and I think that that's super important. And there are some people who read, and you can tell. Like I've had a couple of reviews that of people saying, "Well, the character was so immature and so like." They said, so I'm like, she's gonna grow. You have to give her a chance to grow and to become a better person, to become a more mature person and learn and love. And so I think that that's important, especially in a series, because if it's just a standalone book, your character can grow, and your story can have that happily ever after pretty quickly, because you're just it's just one story. But when you're writing a series, I think you have to really think, and you have to slow that growth down just a little bit so that people are able to see the growth and still want to root for that person. And so yeah, I think it's definitely important that the characters grow, and also that conflict, like you said, Sarah. Conflict is super important to put in there. We all know they're going to end up together, but you want that little bit of stress of some, you know good things are going to happen, but you have that question. You want your readers to question it just a little bit, going, okay, are they going to pull me on this roller coaster and then, let us die at the end? Because we can't handle that. So I definitely just think it's just a little bit of conflict. It doesn't have to be, huge. It doesn't have to be something so stressful that your character wants to quit the book. Because I've read a couple of books where I want to quit and I'm done. It's too stressful. but in a romance, I think just you want your conflict to just be like a roller coaster. You want it to go up, down just a little bit. But you don't want too many loops.
Yeah, I think it was Jude Devereaux, who's like a really famous old school romance author. I think this is her quote, but she said that romance is the hardest genre to write because everybody already knows how it's going to end. And so, like, when I see people, even especially other authors who are like, "Yeah, recommend me some books, but don't recommend me romance. I don't like romance." My first thought is, well, you've probably never read one. And secondly, they're actually extremely difficult to write because you know that they're going to end in a happy ending. So, like Sarah and Mandy said, it's so important that you put the right amount of conflict in the book between your two characters so that it's believable enough that they're going to struggle to throughout the book, but still believable that they are going to find a path to be together in the end. That is incredibly difficult to do well, and I think that anyone who crafts on romance should try and write one because it's not as easy as people think. That's my 2 cents on that.
I have always been an advocate of romance. I think that you all are the hardest working writers out of all the writers that there are, I think, personally. And having read a few kind of dime store romance books to pick up some tricks on how to write romance better, I have gained an immense appreciation for what you are able to do. And that kind of leads me to my next question and final question before we get into the fan stuff. I noticed in some of the better romance books that I've read that aside from the characters themselves being characters and sometimes the setting being a character, that the relationship between the characters is its own character. Do you guys resonate with that in any way?
Who wants to go?
Mandy.
Well, I mean, I guess like my main character, like she has her own thing, and her love interest has his own thing. But yeah, like once they got together, they become their own group. Like you just think of them as, I mean, I have to say their names because it's hard to not to. But like LK and Sam are like a thing. So like when people like them as a couple is a character because when you see them together, they are a certain way. So I guess that's true what you said. So they become their own character, and so when they're apart, they're somebody different. But when they're together as a unit, they take on their own thing. I guess that's true. I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah. How about Rebecca?
I don't know how else to expound on it.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really I love a great trope. So, I mean, if you categorize the relationships in my books that I've written, like book 1 of my paranormal romance series is the enemies to lovers. Book 2 is kind of a second chance romance. Book 3 is a redeemed hero, and book 4 is actually a redeemed heroine. So, yeah, I mean, I think in romance, the trope of the relationship, like what type of story is it going to be, it definitely is a theme of the book or maybe even a character. So yeah, I could see that in my books for sure. Yeah.
Oh, am I going next? Okay. I'd say so. I'd say it becomes its own theme because, and especially, I think that comes after writing, still writing a reverse harem romance where there are 4 boys. So there's a relationship between our heroine and 4 boys, and then there's also a relationship between 2 of the boys as well. So it's not just a reverse harem; it's a bit more of polyamory romance. But reverse harem is easier to market. That's most of the main reason why I marketed that. So I could say that those relationships all on their own are difficult to write, and then of course there's the relationship between all five of them, which is not just. So that is actually a character of itself, because there's a lot of challenges when you have more than one person involved in a relationship. So I would agree with it does become its own thing, and especially when you're writing five people's points of view as well. I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. It's all hard work.
Yeah, you didn't exactly make it easy on yourself.
No, because a lot of reverse harem, they usually only have two of the characters' points of view that I've read, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that, because actually all of these guys have their own relationship with this girl, and there's 5 books, so I can do that. And then when I started writing it, I realized, because originally this wasn't supposed to be a reverse harem, I might add, it just happened by accident. And then and then it was like, I've got all these 5 characters in my head, and it was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to do what they tell me. But yeah, it does become its own thing. Like them as individual, as a couple, yes, it's one thing, and them as what they end up calling themselves a quintet, is a completely separate relationship and dynamic between the 5 of them, as opposed to the one-on-one relationships as well. So yeah, I do think that it does become a character in its own in that respect. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, it totally did.
I never know if I do.
It totally did. And let me just welcome you, Sarah, to the world of epic fantasy with so many POVs. All right.
Multiple POVs.
I love epic fantasy though, so maybe that's where it's come from.
There you go. So those were all the questions I had for y'all, but we're going to get into some of the fan questions that were posed to you guys. So the first one is, what would you say are some of the hardest obstacles that you have faced as an indie author? Let's start with Sarah first.
Finding God, that's a really difficult question.
All of it, right?
Yes. No, but actually, the thing is, writing is actually ultimately is, to me, the easiest part being an indie author is actually writing a book, because that's me being creative. That's not me thinking about how people think about it. That's just me writing a book. It's all the other stuff that comes along with it. Marketing it, I hate marketing. I will happily tell anyone I hate marketing. I do it because I have to, and I've had to learn how to do it, and that was the hardest thing in the world, is to learn how to market myself and my books, because as an author I am a brand, and I hate the fact that we have to be brands. But I am a brand. I've had to make myself into a brand, and then my book, and then the second thing, I have to market my books as well, and I think that's always been the hardest part for me. I've kind of now learned how to an extent, because I had to teach myself how to do Amazon ads. I had to teach myself how to do Facebook ads. I had to find my audience and find people like me who like books like I do. And I had to find everything else. I had to find cover artists, although now I started making my own covers, which is another thing that's, oh God, hard work. But I decided I wanted to learn how to do all the processes myself, and manage it myself. And that's, I think, the hardest part. And I think it started to get easier when I was able to go full time, because now I have the time to do it. But that doesn't mean that I'm slacking off. I work probably way more than I did when I worked in a normal job. Even when I wrote at the same time, I'm working like maybe upwards of 70 hours a week, probably more like 100 hours a week on this. And that's all of the writing and the marketing and everything else that goes along with it. And that's not easy to do, especially when you have a relationship, because I'm married. But thankfully I have an understanding husband. So it's just finding a balance has been a very hard process for me, I think. Those are my challenges. I'll leave it up to someone else to talk about this.
Let's go with Rebecca now.
So for me, similar to Sarah, it was really important for me to teach myself how to do everything in the process. I agree that writing is the easiest part because that's the fun part, that's the creative part. But I don't design my own covers yet. I designed the one cover for the nonfiction book I wrote under a different name, but that's it because I'm not talented enough to do that yet. But I did find a great cover designer. His name's Anthony O'Brien. He's all over Twitter. So I highly recommend him. The hardest part for me has been formatting because I'm in my 40s and I'm not tech savvy and I'm on multiple platforms and there's a different file for every freaking platform. So you have to do like a Mobi for Kindle, then you have to do a POD file for Kindle, for paperbacks on Amazon, and then you have to do a different type of POD file for Ingram Spark, and then you have to do EPUB for all the other sites like Nook and iBooks and everything. And it's just, I'm exhausting myself just thinking about it. I'm terrible at formatting books. I finally learned how to do it now because it was important. I needed to be able to change something or to update my back matter when I published a new book. So I couldn't outsource that. I have to be able to do it myself. But learning it was extremely difficult. And even now that I know how to do it, I dread book formatting every time I have to do it. So that's the hardest part for me.
Fair enough. Mandy.
Okay. Yes, formatting. I had screaming, crying, cussing fits with the last book, and it was like 1:30 in the morning, and I bought vellum. So I just said, I'm just gonna pay for it. So tired of this because every time you would format into Kindle, Amazon, you would look at the preview, and I'm like, and there's 2 blank pages, or just random skips down half a page for whatever. I cannot. No, formatting is terrible. But marketing is my biggest challenge. And like you said, Sarah, having a brand, I didn't even know what my brand was. I was like, I don't really know. And now that I kind of know what my brand is, it's very weird when you're when you go outside of it and people notice. And so I didn't really notice people. I didn't realize people notice things as much as they do until like recently. I was going through something very personal and just having a hard time. And someone on Twitter was like, "Where's your sparkle?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's not here right now." And I realized that was part of my brand, and that they expected me to be that way. And so that has become very challenging. I realized, especially on Twitter, and Twitter is fun, but it is challenging to keep that presence. And so, like, someone says you're very active on Twitter, I'm like, well, you have to be. Like, you have to be active, or else you disappear. And so that has been very challenging, because as much as it looks like you're just having fun, and it is fun, it is also part of the work too, and staying relevant and staying keeping your name in people's in their mind. And so that's been very challenging on balancing that and just being at home, because you're just constantly, I mean, my phone's constantly blowing up with, who knows what, somebody tagged me in, and it's fun and I love it. But it is very challenging to balance that with being at home too, and trying to still be mom, still be wife. And I work at a school, which not right now, but I really miss work. Sorry. But yeah, I work full time. So working full time, and then also being an author, it's like you're a full time job all the time. And so that can be very challenging, is learning how to balance that time and making sure that you're still relevant to your people that are also in your life. And so that is very challenging. And like you said, marketing is the hardest thing ever. And because you want to balance that too, and not just be an advertisement. You don't want your whole brand to be I advertise myself all the time, because you also want to just be a regular person, because I feel like that's part of it too, is learning that when people fall in love with you as a person, they're going to fall in love with your writing as well, because once they get to know you and they know who you are, then they want to know more about what you do. And so I feel like that's really important. So that's a challenge, but it's all good. So.
I dig it. Let's step outside of being writers for a moment and be readers. As a reader, what would you say makes a book more enjoyable to you? We'll start this time with Rebecca.
Well, I mean, I love reading all genres. Romance is definitely my favorite. I love fantasy and sci-fi. So that's probably why I write fantasy, sci-fi, romance. What makes it the most enjoyable? I don't know. I definitely love some steamy scenes. That's I don't mind. I like sweet scenes too. I loved Mandy. I read Mandy's first book and I really enjoyed it. But I don't mind the steamy scenes. It's just for me, it's like when I'm reading a book, if I like when I feel a physical reaction, like does my heart beat fast if something's scary? Did I gasp at that? Am I really enthralled to the point where I can't put the book down? Like that's, I guess, what makes me feel that is probably just really good character interaction, really good dialogue, and really good plot and character development. I mean, and it's just so hard because you can find different authors and you never know until you just start reading them whether you're going to love it or not. And I've read both Sarah and Mandy's books and they're awesome. So they've got it down pat.
Thank you.
Mandy, we'll go with you next.
For me, and of course, romance is my main. I love romance and I love YA romance. I just think of teenagers in high school and it's so fun for me to read. But for me, what I really want in a book is character driven books. Like I really love to fall in love with characters. And fantasy's not my jam. I like it, but like I have a friend, Sean Fraser writes a series. He's an indie author and he wrote The Forgotten Years. And I didn't think it was going to like them because I don't like fantasy, but because I was like, well, he's my friend. I want to read his books. And so I read them and loved them because the characters were so lovable. Like I would go to bed at night and like if I didn't get to finish something, and I do this a lot, I'm kind of crazy, but I'll feel stressed about a character and I'll be like, Lord, please let those characters be okay. And I'm like, why am I praying for a character? But but it's the fact that I got invested, and so I love to get invested with characters, and so that's something that I really love. So I do love series more than I love standalones, but I tend to get to the end and be like, oh, like I want to read more of that person. And so like Sarah Dessen is one of my very favorite authors, but all of her books are standalones. And so by the time I get to the end of it, I'm like, and I know that story is over. And there's not going to be a second book. And so that makes me sad. But her characters are so great. And so that's what I really love. Like I love to, after it's over, I'm still thinking about that character and how wonderfully, how it was just wonderfully written. So I just really love characters. That's my thing.
Awesome. Sarah?
What do I love? Oh gosh. Actually, this is really funny because I recently recorded a podcast talking about my favorite romance tropes and things like that. The weird thing is my taste has changed vastly since I was a teenager to now. Now I primarily read romance. I used to read a lot of fantasy, but I think the main kind of, I guess, overarching theme is a story that drags me in and makes me want to read it. So whether it be plot driven or character driven, I prefer character driven stories because those are the ones that I relate to more. But it's really looking for someone I can root for. And I actually recently read a sci-fi romance by an author on Twitter who I was like, am I going to like this? Because I don't read a lot of sci-fi. And I read it and I completely got dragged into this book. And I was like, this is amazing because this character is supposed to be a villain, which is, I find very interesting because I like to read the more, I like to read the anti-heroes. I think my favorite thing is an anti-hero or an anti-heroine which we don't see a lot of, which I quite like. Love to see more anti-heroines, to be honest. And I found it really interesting to how the author made me fall in love with this character, even though they did kind of bad things. So that's kind of my jam is anti-heroes, and obviously I like the steam as well. I mean, more the better. There has to have a story to go along with it. Anyone who's read my books knows that I like steamy scenes, but yeah, I like what I read. I write what I like, so I read all of that kind of stuff. I guess that's my answer to the question.
Awesome. My internet dropped out, which is unfortunate, but that's all right. So the last thing that I heard was Mandy asking Sarah if you had seen Wicked or read Wicked before.
I have not seen Wicked. I want to go and see Wicked, but we'll have to wait until the West End opens. I think it's in the West End. I'm not actually sure, but when it reopens, I'll have to kind of.
It is excellent.
When our country gets out of lockdown, because it's currently in lockdown, then I might go and do that.
It is really excellent. And I agree with you, Sarah. I think that we need to see more anti-heroines. I am working right now on a story about a female combat veteran and her struggles, not only as a combat veteran with those related issues, but also as a mother and as a wife, and how she deals with that stuff while all that other stuff is going on. And she's an awesome, badass anti-heroine. So I will shoot that story to you when I'm finished with it.
I will be so interested in reading that.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, let me ask this final question. Let's put our writer hats back on. The last question is, what advice would you give an aspiring author out there? And I want to try to stay away from indie or traditionally published authors and just focus on just authors in general. So let's start with Sarah.
My advice to authors is to just keep writing and write something that you want to read. I think that's the key thing. The most important thing in the world is to write something that you want to read and you love. And regardless of whether you're writing to market or you're writing whatever, just make sure that you love it, because that passion for that story will come out in your writing. And you already have a built-in audience that way, because you will be marketing to people who like books like you or who are like you. So that's my one piece of advice that I give to everyone, is just to keep writing and write what you love.
I love it. Let's go with Mandy.
My advice to authors, of course, yes, keep writing and not get discouraged. The publishing world, whether that's traditional or indie, can get frustrating, and you have to be able to be patient, which is very hard. But just to keep persevering and keep going, because if you created the story, then it's meant to be out there, and that someone else will read it and enjoy it and connect to it. So just keep on going and just keep writing.
Yep. And then for me, yeah, I have quite a few people now that I'm an author who come up and say, oh, I've always wanted to write a book, and I really want to do this. And my advice is always just get your butt in a chair and do it. And then they'll say, well, I don't know if I'm a good writer. And I'm like, that doesn't really matter until you're done with the book. So get your butt in a chair, write down all your words, and then you can go back and teach yourself how to be a better writer. But, you're not going to publish your first manuscript anyway. But you're not going to publish anything if you don't get your butt in a chair and write it. So that's always my advice to everybody.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. A very important thing I've learned recently is that whether you're an artist or you're a teacher or you're a doctor, or whatever it is, there's the worry that you want to be the best that you can possibly be, and that if you're not, people won't be engaged. But I think that you should have confidence that people are hungry, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're hungry for a 5-star meal every time they sit down to eat. Sometimes a cheeseburger is okay. So just produce what you love, keep putting it out there, and focus less on being amazing and more on being yourself. There are people out there that really want what you have, and they'll love it, I'm sure. You ladies have all been phenomenal. Thank you so much for being flexible with this re-recording, and also for my internet dropping out halfway through there. I apologize for that.
Thanks for having us. You were a great moderator.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes,
thank
you.
You're all wonderful. I want to give you guys each a moment to plug where people can find your work before we get out of here. So let's start with Rebecca first. Rebecca, where can people find you and your work?
So I'm on all the major platforms, Amazon, obviously. I mean, RebeccaHeffner.com is my website. And I'm also my books mostly now are in audiobook format as well. So if you're an audio listener, and I will just give a shameless plug to what we were talking about earlier. The antagonist in the first book of my series becomes the protagonist in book 4 of my series.
Ooh.
So if you like a redeemed heroine, I got you. Just go on Amazon and snatch it up.
Right on. Sarah?
Okay. Well, all of my books are on Amazon. Most of them are in Kindle Unlimited. You can also find me at my website, which is sarahbaileyWriter.com. I'm obviously on all the social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm quite active on those, so if anyone wants to come and have a chat with me, I'm always welcome. And if you like books that are dark and steamy, then pick one of mine up, because you're guaranteed to find a good love story, even if there's lots of crazy, mad stuff going on. And and I would say my latest series has just dropped, and that I consider her an anti-heroine on some level. So go ahead and pick that up if you're interested in reverse horror material.
There you go. Mandy, why don't you round us out?
Hey, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. I try to stay active on Instagram. I kind of forget about Facebook. I'm going to be honest. But I try. You can get all my books on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited, and they're very sweet, still lovey and Hallmarky. If you like the Hallmark movies, you really will love my books. So, and hopefully soon will be audiobooks. I'm trying to get into that. So I think I've had several people tell me they want me to read them, but Laura Kate's from New York, and I do not sound New York at all. Rebecca, you should read them.
I don't know. I hired a male narrator with a really sexy voice for my series, so.
Same here.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I'm just going to hire out. There's no way. Laura Kate does not sound like this. But anyway, and I'm my website's mandylawsonbooks.com. So, yeah, that's me.
By the way, I like your accent. I'm originally from North Carolina, so I like it.
Thank you.
Ladies, you've all been wonderful. Thank you very much. Good luck in your writing careers. I hope that you find all the success that you're looking for. Readers, go out there, pick up Rebecca, Sarah, and Mandy's books, and fall in love. Thank you guys so much. And we'll talk again sometime.
Thank you.
Thank you.